Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. In this week's episode, I shall be looking at Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It was written by Ian Fleming and published in 1965. Now, it was originally 3 volumes, but then it was later released as one, and it was then adapted to screen in 1968. I will be looking at 4 things overall, sort of like how good is the film, how good is the book, how well does the plot take from the book, and how well is it overall. Now, also bear in mind there are spoilers within this episode, but if you've reached this point in your life and you haven't seen or heard of anything to do with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, maybe you've been living under a rock. So first things first, the film. Now, this film is glorious. I love this film. It's such a good family adventure that you can kind of just enjoy growing up and as you're older. Obviously, you've got the famous child catcher, and he's terrifying, basically. As I said, as the child catcher, as a child, is really the thing of nightmares. And you've got the really nice songs like Truly Scrumptious, and obviously Chitty Chitty Bang Bang itself, the title character there. And it's just a really good sort of like sunny day, kind of put your feet up, put it on, have a glass of pop or whatever, and just watch it film. Characters are relatable. And honestly, I want things to end well for them, and I always do, which, is positive for any kind of kids film, because sometimes you come across characters and you're like, nah, I don't like you. Like, you get on my nerves. But these characters, I'm like, oh, I really want it to work out. So this family film, I'll give an 8 out of 10. Now, the book is such a cute little story for a child, and it was actually written, as I said, by Ian Fleming, who wrote the Bond films, as we know, Bond books even, and he actually did write this book for his child, for his young son Casper. Love that name. And I love the stories. It tells like little adventures of like magic and mystery, and you've got these families go on this adventure in this magical car, and it's just. It's an easy read, and it's a nice read, and it's something that I can see reading to kids and their kids reading it to their kids and so on and so forth. And it's a story that really sticks with you as well. And it's so simply told and so brilliantly done, and you sort of sat there going, oh, that's really nice. And honestly, it's not too far off the real world either. So it's sort of like, even though you have got a magical car and you've got adventures, you've still got a mum and a dad that love each other. And, the 2 little twins that love each other, and they go off on a family adventure. And it's one that, as you can see, it's not a big book. I got this read in like 2 hours, easily done. And it's a story that I would recommend reading to your kids, or just reading for yourself, because it's a nice story. You can read it as an adult. I did. Now, the plot. So, in the film, we start with the Potts family. You've got the eccentric grandfather, you've got the loving dad and the twins. But in the book, you've got the mum, the dad, and the twins. So they kind of completely write out the mum in the film and add an eccentric grandfather for them. So in the film, they rescue a used up old car and work on it as a family. And it's sort of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Obviously, that's who we know it is. But in the film as well, we come across a character called Truly Scrumptious, whose dad owns a sweet company that his Mr. Potts tries to sell a sweet to, basically. And honestly, you've got Truly comes across, and she drives the twins home, and she accuses truancy and all of that, and sparks fly between her and Mr. Potts. Now, in the book, they get an old car because the dad made a big sale of his sweets, which in the film, they don't quite make the sale of the sweets. You find out later on that they make the sale, but for dog sweets, not adult sweets. And because of this sale in the book, it makes Mr. Potts rich. Well, I say rich. He's got a couple of grand now, which he didn't have before. So in the book, as a family, they're hunting high and low to find this perfect car. And then they finally find this little like old race car that's unique and one of a kind, and they decide to fix it up. And Mr. Potts decides that he's going to go and do it all himself. So then in the book, the kids go off to boarding school while Mr. Potts fixes the car. However, in the film, as I said, the kids are around throughout the entire plot, basically. In both, though, the car gets named Chitty Chitty Bang Bang due to her exhaust, because it sounds like a chitty chitty and then a bang bang at the end. So that's kind of cute how she gets her name. Now, on the first drive in the book, it's on the motorway, and they're just sort of driving along, and they see how fast they can go and everything. In the film, it's, you know, they're driving off, they pick up Truly and they end up having a picnic at the beach, which is kind of sweet, kind of cute really, because Truly becomes a part of the family. So then they sort of head out to the beach. Now in the film they're already at the beach, in the book they're heading to the beach now. Now in the book there's a hint that the car has a mind of her own at this point, and pretty much flies them to the beach with like all these little like gadgets and gizmos. And then when it's crowded, Chitty then takes them out to sea where a little private bit of sand is available. Now, the film is a straightforward drive to the beach. They go to leave and then they're attacked by pirates that are working for the Baron, and they manage to escape. It's a bit of a strange one, the film. And now as they get back home in the film, they see Grandpa Potts being kidnapped by the Baron. Then they try to drive after him, but drive off a cliff. And then we see Chitty is able to fly, so they follow the pirates to Bulgaria. Real name. So Bulgaria is a land with no children. Well, they have children, but the children have been captured by the child catcher. Because the Baroness hates children. So in the book, however, the sea rises and they skim away on the sea, almost like a boat, as Chitty has now been able to go across water, and they go off towards France. And they end up driving into a cave along the French coast. So it's sort of two different plots. You know, on the film it's becoming a little bit more ludicrous, a little bit more like magical and out there. In the book they're kind of still sticking to this idea that this is a real place. And they are going from England to France across the coast, which we all know you can do from Dover. So anyway, so in the film at this point, Truly, the twins and Mr. Potts are being harboured by a toy maker so that the child catcher doesn't get the twins. However, Chitty is now captured. So Truly and Mr. Potts devise a scheme to free all of the children from the Baron's lair and to get Chitty Chitty Bang Bang back. Now in the book, they're going through this massive cave with like all these like little like traps and things, and they end up getting to a huge warehouse filled with things. I mean, we come across guns and dynamite and just an assortment of weapons basically. So in this warehouse there's boxes and boxes and boxes of munitions. They then get out of the cave and Mr. Potts decides to blow the thing up. Why wouldn't you? You come across a whole thing of munitions, let's blow it up. It can take out half the cliff and probably a couple of villages, but it's fine, let's do it. So in the book, they decide to then blow it up. But then as they're driving away, they encounter the gangsters whose munitions they literally just blew up. So then they get away by the fact that Chitty then flies over the car. Now, however, the gangsters aren't ones to give up easily, and they follow the car to the hotel that the family is staying at and then kidnap the twins. Then drives them off because they need the twins to carry out this like ludicrous like heist that they're doing, because of course you need unpredictable children you've never worked with before. So in the film at this point, Truly and Mr. Potts have disguised themselves as life-sized dolls for the Baron's party, and they have this really lovely little song and dance. And then, you know, they go off, they save the children, they snare the Baron and the Baroness, and in the ensuing chaos, the Baron, the Baroness, the child catcher are all captured. Chitty comes to their rescue and they've returned with Grandpa, so they then return on this lovely little sort of like adventure. Now in the book, Mr. and Mrs. Potts are now heading out after the children. Now the reason they're able to head out after the children is because Chitty has set off, I can only imagine it is like a little drone thing that follows the gangsters to find out where they're being kept. And then Chitty wakes up Mr. and Mrs. Potts by like blaring her horn. She drives them and almost follows like a GPS to where these children are being kept. So in the book, they you know, they then sort of like catch up with the children, but the children realise that they're being used to rob someone, and to rob a really nice person. So they end up alerting him to what's going on. He manages to lock it down. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang comes in and rams the car. They then sort of like capture, the police then come along and they capture these gangsters that are wanted in England and France. They end up with a reward and loads of chocolate. They become firm friends with like the French family that they saved. You know, they go off, then the book sort of ends with, as they're driving off, they then decide that they're going to go off on another adventure, and off they fly, which I find very weird because they've got no money, no food, no passports, but who's to judge? But then in the film, it almost seems like the story because it goes back to them four on the beach, and it's almost like it's a story that Mr. Potts has told the kids to pass the afternoon. So they go in with that kind of, did it really happen kind of vibe. But then it starts flooding, so then they drive off. But then Mr. Potts doesn't think he can offer truly anything, as he's poor with two kids, so he drives her home and tells her no. But then he finds out that has made money from the sweets mentioned earlier that he sells that are now dog sweets, not children's sweets. And then he ends up going off and trying to get Truly back together. So it's a little bit, I mean, it's kind of sweet that he thinks, you know, he can't offer her anything, so he kind of tells her no, but I mean, she's a woman, she knows what she's getting into. But anyway, so as I'm sure you can tell, the plot of the two are completely different. I mean, on the one hand, you've got like this adventure that's close enough to the truth in the book that you think that this is actually happening. And then they're going from England to France, and then in France they decide to go off on another adventure, and you kind of almost believe that it's going to be like a trilogy of books almost. Do you know what I mean? Like with other adventures with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And it's just, it is what it is. It's a really nice little bedtime story. In the film, it's sort of like more sensationalized, and they've got that bigger adventure and that bigger stakes, and all the children have been kidnapped and all of this, and they really and then at the end just sort of go, but was it all a story? It just feels like a little bit, I'm like, oh, I kind of wanted it to be true, but will it be true? Won't it be true? But as you can see, the two are very different. And honestly, as much as I love both narrations, I do grade it on how close the film and the book narration really are. So obviously I'm gonna have to give it a 2 out of 10 for the plot, because I mean, it's got the name of the car, it's got the name of the family, the Potts, and that's about it, to be perfectly honest. It's not really got much else plot wise, so you know, that's kind of why I've given it that. Now overall, you know, as I said, they've killed, well, they just made the mum disappear in the film, and they gave them an eccentric grandpa, and they flew them off, and you met all these other characters, and in the book you've got all like the gangster characters and everything like that, and you've got the French family. So again, the two completely different narrations. The settings aren't really the same either, because obviously in the book it's like a real place is England, France, and then wherever they go off to next. Obviously in the film it's England and then Bulgaria, which I mean, I'm not great at geography, but you know, Bulgaria really. So it's sort of like you know that, so the settings isn't really the same, the plot isn't really the same, the characters aren't really the same, and the storyline is just so overall it kind of gets a 2 out of 10 for me. Again, fantastic film, fantastic book, but not in the slightest the same narration at all. Obviously this is my own opinion. I'm happy to hear if you agree or disagree, or if you really like the film or the book, leave it below in the comments. Just let me know sort of like what's going on. Don't forget to click subscribe and like this video, so you'll be alerted whenever a new video comes out, which obviously 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. Now if there are any book to film adaptations that you'd like me to have a look at, you know, just leave it below in the comments or send me a message, and I'm more than happy to add it to my list, which is ever growing. I didn't realise how many there are out there. But join me next week for my contented narrative around Rebecca, which is a fantastic Hitchcock film and a novel by Daphne du Maurier. But until then, don't forget to remember to always keep it contento.